I refuse to be angry or sad or frustrated or apathetic about homelessness. In fact, I am inspired. I am inspired because it can be an opportunity for entrepreneurial endeavors. And I invite you to also be social entrepreneurs. In 2006, I bought a house. That was a really bad year to buy a house. In 2008, I got cut back at work. I was teaching at a university. So I called my bank and I said, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to be able to maybe make these payments in about 4 months' time. And they said, hey, just so you know, we won't even talk to you until you stop paying. And that threw me on my heels. And I thought, they're asking me to make myself vulnerable to homelessness. And I thought, what is going on? Who are these people that are homeless? How do they get there? How do they survive? What are their complications? And how do they get out of homelessness? And that threw me into research and study and interviews and documentaries and conversations. And I've noticed that for the past 10 years, we keep banging our heads up against the same problems when we try to support the homeless community. Now here's some sad stuff that I'm going to go through, and then we'll get to the inspirational stuff, right? And I'm not slinging mud. I'm not slinging mud. So our homeless programs, as we hit them now, I've identified one of 5 big things happens. So 1, a program gets curbed because of who we think homeless people are. This kind of comes out most easily in the not in my backyard scenario. Yeah, it's not happening over here. 2, we fund something that helps, and it is a passion project, and we put a lot of resources and a lot of money into it, and then it gets criticized because it actually only supports a small fraction of the homeless population. This comes out in, look at this high-rise building we built. It holds 40 homeless people. And then someone asks, well, how many homeless people do you have? And they say, well, 3,000. This happens often. Or 3, we have programs that support people to continue to be homeless. So in other words, we don't have money to get people off the streets. We have money to give them a sandwich. And then we have money to give them another sandwich the next day, another sandwich the next day. The other thing is some programs just run out of money because the charity ends, the giving stops. And then lastly, out of desperation, so many communities move their homeless to other communities. And this is most salacious when people are given bus tickets and say, please don't come back. So what do? Inspiration time, right? Inspiration time? Okay, so the first thing we do, we've got to let go of who we think these homeless people are, because you have no idea who they are until you talk to them. And they could be veterans, they could be mothers, they could be children, they could be people that lost their house, they could be people that lost their job. And yes, they could be drug addicts, and they could be ex-cons, and they could be the populations that we feel it's okay to neglect. But the one thing they have in common is they don't have a personal support network or family to support them in their time of need. So, what I think needs to happen is each community needs to support those homeless in their community for 2 reasons. 1, those homeless don't have anybody else. And 2, that community has a vested interest in its own success. Now, this has to be self-sustainable. Charity only goes so far. We burn out on it. It has to have a return. We have to be able to see a direct return on our investment. I call this small business homeless. So what does this mean? This means you have to find some advantage to you doing this deed, and then some reason for you to continue on. So, for example, instead of neighborhood watch, why don't we have neighborhood help? So you go to a person in your neighborhood and say, hey man, I see you're on the streets. Can I do anything to help you? What do you need? And you start pulling resources. Perfect example of this is I know a group of ladies in Sacramento, and they got together to get this homeless drug addict off of the street. And they got him sober for 90 days. And 90 days he was good, and then he disappeared because drugs are hard. And they were dejected. And I said, the good story is in the deed, it's not in the conclusion. And maybe he gets sober again. What they did do is they were trying to document their work so they could take it to their politicians so they could get some reform. Other ideas, and I'm just spitballing here, okay? You could, if you're cleaning up your community, maybe you have a homeowners association fee, and you can negotiate with your homeowners association. Hey, this community group is cleaning up our community, we're getting the homeless off, maybe I can get a rebate on my HOA fee. Or if you get a homeless panhandler out of a parking lot of a grocery store, maybe that grocery store can give you a gift certificate. Again, it's all personal. I know a barber that cuts hair for homeless on the weekends. Everyone needs a haircut. Dignity goes far. And he's become an Instagram star because of that. Because of his Instagram stardom, he's actually starting to get larger contracts. Again, it's a bit of a loss leader. That's a capitalism term, right? So, I also know an architect who makes these origami cardboard emergency shelters. And yeah, they don't work for all homeless and all situations, but they're like origami. She's making working for homeless cool again. Like, that's important, right? Hearts and minds. So, individually, you can do this. Now, you can also support existing nonprofits. The nonprofits I've seen that exist and continue to exist through donation impoverishedness, that's not a word, donation poverty, they have a for-profit business tied to run their nonprofit mission. Habitat for Humanity has restores. You support Habitat for Humanity by buying their goods, and then they go build people houses. Other nonprofits tie themselves to this for-profit model, so they're self-sustainable. And not only as a community member do you buy their product, but if you have marketing skills, maybe help market them. If you are a realtor, maybe find a sweet spot for their store so they can get more foot traffic, so they can be sustainable. And you should absolutely get compensated for that, or you should get incentives, or you should at least get what I call social leverage. In other words, other people want to do business with you because you helped your community. So these are some ideas for social entrepreneurship and direct action. And I want to tell you a story about my direct action. It's a little funny. So I was screening my documentary on homelessness for homeless shelters. And I struck up this conversation with this woman that was applying for shelter. And I really liked her. I really got along with her, older woman, but I just really got along with her. And she unfortunately didn't get into the shelter. But I just couldn't let her be homeless. I couldn't let her sleep behind the grocery store. I couldn't. So I called my wife and I said, we got to bring her in. We got to bring her in. And let me tell you, my wife was not happy. Not happy at all. But brought her in, got her a bus pass, the homeless lady, not my wife. got her bus pass, got her phone minutes, so she could call for job interviews and get to those job interviews. And within 3 months, she was starting to get a life back. And yeah, I had consternation at home. But man, I got to see my direct action get somebody back. And that is completely rewarding, even though there isn't some kind of monetary value at the end of that. But monetary value is okay. You shouldn't get rich off the homeless, but you shouldn't starve off of helping the homeless either. So the last thing I want to ask you is, yeah, maybe you're not going to bring someone into your home, but what can you do? And not accusatory, not slinging mud, not what can you do? What can you do? Thank you so much for your time.